Hello everyone, welcome back to iFarouq Dev channel. This is going to be our second episode in this series called How To. In the previous episode, I taught you how to make a stunning menu indicator in different ways. If this is your first time here, then I guess you have a lot to catch up on. But no worries, you may do so later after watching this incredible video. In this episode today, I brought another useful topic that I believe a lot of genius and experienced developers will need to know because they will benefit from it and they will know more about it. This topic is none but how to avoid SQL injection. I hope you will sit tight on your seat because you have a lot to know about this SQL injection. Without further ado, let's dive in. So, this episode is classified into three major categories, which we are going to stick on and talk about. These categories are: what is SQL injection? How is SQL injection working? And how to avoid or prevent your database from SQL injection. I'm going to take every one of these subtopics and explain it to you one by one. SQL injection is also known as SQLi. It's a common attack vector that uses malicious SQL code for back-end database manipulation to access information that was not intended to be displayed. This information may include number of items, including sensitive company data, user lists, or private customer details such as phone numbers, email addresses, resident addresses, date of birth, credit card details, etc. SQL injection is a web security vulnerability that allows an attacker to interfere with the queries that an application makes to its database. This can allow an attacker to view data that they are not normally able to retrieve. This might include data that belongs to other users or any user data that the application can access. In many cases, an attacker can modify or delete this data, causing persistent changes to an application's content or behavior. SQL injection usually occurs when you ask user for input, like the username or user ID, and instead of a name or ID, the user gives you an SQL statement that you will unknowingly run on your database. Most SQL injection vulnerability occur within the where clause of select query. However, SQL injection vulnerability can occur at any location within the query and within different query steps. Some other common locations where SQL injection arises are in update statement, within the updated value or where clause, in insert statement, within the inserted values, in select statement, within the table or column name, and in select statement, within the order by clause. You can prevent most instances of SQL injection using parameterized queries instead of strange concatenation within the query. These parameterized queries are also known as prepared statements. Prepared statement is a feature used to execute the same or similar SQL statement repeatedly with high efficiency. Prepared statement basically work like this. An SQL statement template is created and sent to the database. Certain values are left unspecified, called parameters, labeled with question mark. The database passes, compiles, and performs query optimization on SQL statement template and stores the results without executing it. At later time, the application binds the value to parameter and the database executes the statement. The application may execute the statement as many times as it wants with different values. This function binds the parameters to the SQL queries and tells the database what the parameters are. The SS argument lists the types of data that parameters are. The character S tells MySQL that parameter is a string. The argument may be one of four types: integer, which indicates by I, double indicated by D, string indicated by S, and blob indicated by B. and all these you must assign them using lower cases, not upper cases. If you use upper cases, it's not going to work and it will give you an error. Compared to executing SQL statement directly, prepared statements have three main advantages. 1. Prepared statements reduce passing time as preparation on the query is done only once, although the statement is executed multiple times. 2. Bound parameter minimize bandwidth to the server as you need send only the parameter each time and not the whole query. 3. Prepared statements are very useful against SQL injection because parameter values which are transmitted later using different protocol need to be correctly escaped. If the original statement template is not delivered from external inputs, SQL injection cannot be occur. We are going to use two types of SQL queries to observe this SQL injection we are talking about. The queries we are going to use are MySQLi object-oriented and the PDO. By using these two types of SQL queries, we will observe that both SQLi and PDO handle multiple queries differently when using row queries. Let's break this down. In SQLi object-oriented, the query method doesn't allow multiple SQL statements by default for security reasons. When you try to execute a query like this you see on your screen, MySQLi treats it as an invalid syntax because it expects a single query per query method call. The semicolon used to separate queries is treated as part of the statement, leading to the syntax error. To execute multiple statements in SQL query, you need to explicitly enable it using multiple query method. However, this is not recommended for security reasons as it opens up some possibility of SQL injection if the input is not properly sanitized. In row PDO, the query method does not restrict multiple statements by default. If you execute the same query using this row PDO as you see on your screen, it will execute both select and truncate queries without throwing an error, assuming valid syntax. This is why SQL injection payload work in row PDO but not in MySQLi single query. MySQLi was designed to prevent accidental execution of multiple statements to reduce the risk of SQL injection. By default, it restricts the execution to one statement per method call, while PDO is more flexible, allowing multiple statements by default, which can be convenient for batch operation but introduces risk if not carefully handled. So at this point, I'm going to move on and show you practically how this SQL injection working. But first, I need you to know that the concept of SQL injection remains the same regardless of whether you are using MySQL, PDO, or Postgres, or any other SQL-based database. However, the implementation details and how injection is executed can differ due to the differences in how these databases handle queries, placeholders, and syntax. Okay? This is our first example here using MySQLi single query statement. This is our database connection. I'm sure that many of you know how to do that. And this is our query that collects the data from HTML form and pass it to database using SQL and PHP query. And this is our insertion query and this is our select query, while this is the query that used to display the data information for us on our browser. So here I'm going to show you this is our data from database iFarouq, John, Jane, Mary, and Julie, and this is the form that collecting the data and pass it to the database. Okay, here we are talking about SQL injection, right? Just think about it using the explanation I just gave you how this is working practically. I mentioned earlier that SQL injection can occur through the form that we normally give user to input their details, like this one, username, email, password, and we can use it not to insert data into database, rather we use it to get information from user and display the information that user needs from us. But based on the explanation I gave you, MySQLi single query statement cannot handle multiple query at the same time, but PDO does. Even though SQL single query statement cannot handle multiple statements at once, it doesn't mean that you accept, oh, SQLi query is skilled than PDO. No, as long as you are going to use row query, not prepared or not something that may consider more secure than raw queries, you are in great danger. For instance here, if we try to execute this query here, it's going to drop us syntax error saying that we try to execute multiple query at the same time. Okay, let's give it a shot. You see, this is what I'm talking about. So that means we cannot submit multiple query apart from this query we are passing here. The query here I'm passing is insert into users table this username, email and password that user provided. So if we try to execute this, it's not going to work properly. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. If I write var dump here, this is what we are trying to execute here. You see, user, email, password and values here are empty username, empty email and provided password followed by another query. Drop table users. As long as this query is executed, our users table is going to be deleted completely from our database. So how can we prevent that from happening? We are going to prevent it using prepared statement. But before then, I'm going to try another example here using select query, which is right here. Let's assume we are going to fetch users using this ID, which is here. ID 1 is iFarouq 2, John 3, continuously to ID 5. If I said I want to fetch users information where that user's ID is 1, what we are going to do here is wire clause ID equal to the ID, which is up here. So we are going to use get global variable to get that particular ID from our URL bar. So if I said here, for instance, the user I need to fetch his record is user with the ID 1. Once I click enter, that information is going to display right on my screen. Okay, let's see. You see, we have only one user displayed on my screen. Another example, if I try user number 3 and it's Jen. If we take a look here, you see ID 3 is what? Jen. How about if I try something malicious that I want to display the entire user's ID from that particular database? Okay, if I try user 302, is it going to display? No, it's not going to display because we don't have that user on our database. Okay, let's try it. You see, we have null. Okay, how about if we say this? If user ID equals 3, then we need to display. If not, we are going to say 1 equal to 1. This 1 equal to 1 is always true. 1 equal to 1 means that user equals to user. If that user ID is not in our database, then this user equal to user is always there, which means we are going to display the entire user's data from that database table. Okay, let's give it a shot. See, if you take a look here, the entire users in our database table are displayed right on my screen, which is very bad because we are not intended to display the entire information on screen for one single user. So this is the most common thing that bad guys use to inject such malicious things in our database. Okay, let's add another user in our database and see if it's going to work. A record has inserted successfully, but due to this ID here, give us this error. You see, admin has been displayed. Alright, so how can we prevent that from happening using prepared statement? First, how are we going to do that is simple. We are just going to use prepared statement here. I'm going to use this connection variable right here. Although we can do it different way, but this one is much straightforward and much easier to understand. Alright, query prepare. Okay, the second thing is, as I told you earlier, we are going to use parameterize using this question mark, and the third value here is going to be another question mark. Okay, but we are not done yet. The second argument we are going to say insert bind param, then followed by open and close bracket. Okay, the second argument here is we are going to tell interpreter that the first value here you are collecting is one of these four, either integer, float, string or blob. But if we take a look here, username is a string, email is a string, and password is also can be string and can be integers. But what we are going to use generally here, password is a string, so we are going to assign s, another s, another s. Mind you, I have told you that if you use upper cases or capital letter, it's not going to work. It's going to throw you an syntax error. So in order to work perfectly, you are going to use it in a lower cases. Then follow these values, which is number 1 here, username, second value is email, and third value password. Okay, so the last thing we are going to do here is to say insert execute. Okay, alright, that's all. So once we did this, we are good to go. Select, close. Means we are done with this insertion, so we need to terminate the operation. So let's give it a shot and see if it's really working. Refresh my page. See, it's working. Okay, and let's submit another value here. Let's say user 123 and submit it. We have error at line 33. Okay, in order to do that, we are going to use this, for instance, and say this. Okay, let's give it a shot. Record inserted successfully. So here I'm going to run this again. You see, this user has dropped success. User 123. You see, it's working. Let's give it another shot. iFarouq. Let's give it a shot. You see, it's inserted successfully. And if you use this, you see, it displayed, which means we are really working in immigration. Okay, here we are going to try that SQL injection again and see if it's going to really work. So how about if we try this? Say inserted successfully. I mean this. Let's display. You see, it just displayed the exact code we submitted. It didn't make any malicious or attempt to execute this query drop user stable, which means we are safe. But for now, there are a lot of moves that bad guys can make. Example, this display. We haven't solved that yet. I hope you understand. If we try this, it's working, but if we try this, it's also working, which is also an injection. We are going to solve that using the same procedure, which is prepared statement. So I'm going to use this again and say prepare, open and close bracket, followed by second argument, select, bind param. The parameters here, we are expecting to collect what? Integer. An ID is an integer, so we are going to collect integer. So here we are going to replace it with question mark. Alright, the last argument we are going to use here is this param. I'm going to say if select execute, then we are going to display this, right? But we cannot do this here. We are going to take it and put it right back here. Then in here we can say $run and then followed by run equal to this get result. Open and close bracket. Okay, so once we run this, it's going to work just perfectly. Okay, select, close. Alright, so let's give it a shot and see. It worked. We are expecting to receive an integer, not a string. For instance here, if I run this var_dump statement, if we take a look here, trying to understand what kind of value we submitted. Let's see ID. You see, it's a string, not an integer. Okay, let's try this ID 102. Let's regard it as a string, but it's an integer. You have to know that. So once we try that in here, we are going to see what. Okay, let's give it a shot. How about if I try user with the ID 1? You see it displayed. You understand? If we try the user with the ID 2, it's also displaying. But if we try something malicious like this, it's what? It's not going to work. Like 100 this. You see, it did not display anything for us, which means it's not working. So we have solved this problem for now. So you see, our work is getting better and better and better. Another example here is SQL injection. If I submit this tag, just think about it. What is going to happen here? Okay, let's give it a shot. You see what is going to really happen. Okay, how about if I check this and see what is really going to happen? We have ID 49. Okay, let's give it a try. 49. You see, do you understand what really happened here? I submitted another username but using HTML tag. So this is what I got. But if I try to use this one, you see the size is moderate. But if I try this user, the size and the font weight is different from others. Alright, this is HTML. How about if I try something like JavaScript? Let's submit it and see. This is our JavaScript code. with the ID. You see, instead of to display the data information, it keep popping this alert for us, and whenever I refresh my page, it's going to be this. You see, whenever a user uploaded this, it's going to be displaying this again and again and again. So let's assume you are fetching the entire user's data from that particular table. Every user that can see the entire information is going to be receiving this alert pop-up. So how can we resolve that problem? To resolve it, we cannot trust to display the data right on our screen just like that. Rather, we are going to use some method called HTML special chars. Here it is. So once we embedded our data into this method, is going to work just perfectly, and it's going to display the exact code the user inserted into our database. Alright, let's give it a shot and see. You see, we have no longer receiving that pop-up. This is what the user planted in our database, and this is the exact thing we receive right on our screen. How about if we try the ID 49? You see, we solved it. I hope you understand and you find it useful. This is for example 1 using MySQL-Injection Query Statement. As for example 2 using PDO, here is our code here. So I've already imported the code and pasted it here. So if you take a look here, this is our row PDO queries. This is our insert query and this is our select query. So how about if we give it a try like we already did to our database here? Let's try this one first. ID 50 or ID 1 equal to 1. Is it going to work? We don't know. Let's give it a try. You see, it worked perfectly. Okay, how about if we try to empty this table entirely? After I run this code, I'm going to say truncate table call users. You see, just think about it. What is going to happen if I just execute this query? Is it going to empty the table entirely or is it not going to work? Okay, let's give it a shot. See, I run the code. So what we are going to do here now is to refresh the page to see if it's going to. You see, our table is what? Empty. Okay, let's select here. We have no data in our table. What just happened? If you process what just happened now, you will realize that I ran 2 multiple queries in one go and it happened to empty our entire table. How about if I drop the table and insert data, set iFarouq, data has inserted, and if I try user 123, it's also inserted, and if I try Jen, it's also inserted. Okay, let's give it a shot here. You see, the data I just submitted has inserted into my users table. So another example here I'm trying to show is how about if I truncate the users using this statement here. I'm not going to drop the table because I haven't set the example yet. But what I'm going to show you here is bad guy is not going to make this query right here, because if you take a look here, this dash is a comment in SQL. So if you execute this, the query is going to forget about 2 arguments, which is email and password. So if you run it this way, it's not going to work. But let's give it a shot and see. You see what it said? Insert value list doesn't match the column list. If you take a look here, we have 3 arguments, but we only submitted 1 single argument, which is bad. And close this tab, which is bad. Okay, I'm going to dump it and see what I really mean by that. And you see, it submitted only 1 value, which is password, but the remaining argument, username and email, it did not include it in our values query. So that's why we have this error message. But had it been I submitted it here instead of here, so truncate the table, which is meant to empty the table. If I run it now, it's going to work. You see, it truncates the table entirely, which means it's working on these inputs, but it's not working in the first and second, but it worked at last input. Another example I'm going to show you here is if we drop the table, our table is going to be gone completely. but I'm going to try this here instead of there or here. Once I run this code, our table is going to be dropped. Let's give it a shot and see if it's really going to work. We don't have users table anymore in our database. Let's see. You see, error, syntax error, base table or view not found. Let's try and check it here. You see, we don't have table there. And if I get back to my database, our users table is gone. This is just minor or common thing about SQL injection. Your database can be destroyed in one click. That's why we need this prepared statement. We take a serious action when making communication between our application and our database. So now I'm going to put back my users table and continue from where we stop. You see, my users table is back. So now we are going to apply the same procedure, which is prepared statement, in our PDO query. We are going to say $sign prepare statement followed by closing button. But this one here, we have two options. Option one is to use question mark, or we can use a name. Question mark, we can use it as I did there, and we can also use this username. We can either use question mark or we can use just username. Okay, I'm going to use this one, then you can use the question mark I have showed you earlier using our single query statement. Alright, let's continue. Followed by another next argument, insert bind param. But here we don't need this underscore, and followed by p uppercase. But here, if we intend to use this kind of method, instead of to assign our argument to string, integer, float, and globe, we are just going to use this. Call this parameter username and assign it to this name right here. Backend username, $sign, sorry, yes. Then followed by the other remaining parameters: email, set time, email, and password. So as we reach this point, we are going to do exactly the same as we did earlier to execute the statement. So I'm going to say insert execute. So I'm going to insert it here, right here. Say execute run. So if run equals to this and that. Alright, let's give it a shot and see. We have syntax error 23. Sorry, we don't need this. Rather, we are going to use comma and comma. Okay, let's give it a shot. You see? Alright, let's submit another user and see if it's going to work. Invalid parameter in the line 47. So if we take a look, okay, this is I forgot to insert colon before the parameter. So once we did that, and I'm going to give it another shot and see if it's going to really work successfully. You see, record inserted successfully. So if we give it a shot here and display, you see admin has been displayed there. And if I try user 123 and submit it, it's also inserted successfully. Let's give it a shot. You see, ID, if I said like ID 6, I guess, no, okay, 7 or 8, right here, sorry, ID 25. You see, it's working. So now if I try to execute something malicious like inject some query here and see if it's really going to work or not. Record inserted successfully, and we pass the drop query that is going to drop our users table. So did it really executed or not? To find out, we are going to refresh our page here and see. You see, it's working. We pass that query successfully into our database without executing it, which is very, very perfect. You see, we solve this problem using prepared statement and also PDO query. So another example here we are going to execute is this select query. So I'm going to apply the same thing as I did earlier, prepare. So prepare statement followed by, I'm going to substitute this with this colon id followed by select bind param and then $id. So execute, but it's not the final query here. We have another one line of code to make it work. So run followed by select fetch all. Okay, that's all. So once we execute our code and run it, it's going to work perfectly and successfully. So let's give it a shot and see. You see, it means it's working. Let's try to give it this and see. ID1, you see it's successfully working. How about ID2, ID3? So how about ID40? You see it's working. We have solved that problem as well, and which means if I run this code, it's not going to work, but if I choose the perfect ID, it's going to work perfectly. So now we have solved this problem using MySQLi single query statement and PDO with both prepared statements, which is very good, and we have achieved a very great work here. Okay, the last example is a bonus. We are going to use SQLi Mult-Query statement. I'm sure not every of you more familiar with that, so that's why I call it bonus. But before then, I'm going to say this briefly. If you reach this point of my video, that means you are learning stuff from me. Please consider hitting a subscribe button so I can continue to grow and keep providing for you guys with this value. It's free, it won't cost you anything, but it really does help and mean a lot to me. So thank you so very much. Alright, without further ado, I'm going to dive to multi-query statement. But the question here is there any differences between my SQLi single query and multi-query function using prepared statement to either select query or insertion query? The answer is yes. There are differences between using my SQLi single query statement and multi-query statement when working with prepared statement. However, it is important to know that multi-query statement doesn't support prepared statement. Prepared statements are designed to handle one query at a time, ensure prioritized execution for security and performance. Okay, let me explain the key differences and limitations here. When using prepare with MySQLi, you can execute a single query at a time. Each query must be separately prepared and executed. Key points: the query is prepared once and executed securely with bound parameters. 2. Suitable for single query statement. 3. You cannot directly execute multiple queries like select another select continuously in one prepared statement. The multi-query method allows you to execute multiple queries in a single call. However, multi-query doesn't support prepared statement. If you need to use multi-query, you must consider raw SQL queries, which can be less secure if not handled carefully. The key point is allows execution of multiple SQL statements in one call. 2. Doesn't support parameterized queries, making it vulnerable to SQL injection if user input is embedded directly. 3. Must handle results explicitly using show result and next result. Why prepared statement and multi-query statement cannot work together? The answer is prepared statement rely on parameter binding for single query, while multi-query statement processes a batch of raw SQL commands. These two mechanisms are fundamentally incompatible because prepared statement focus on secure and reusable single query execution, while multi-query is designed for executing multiple raw SQL statements in one go. When to use one of these, prepared statement or multi-query statement? So prepared statement is you can use them to secure execution of a single queries or in loops, where you can execute the same prepared query multiple times with different parameters. While multi-query statement use it for batch operation, where you need to execute multiple queries in one call but ensure the queries are sanitized. Mind you, if you are to use multi-query statement, you have to be extremely careful and you have to make sure that you use sanitized statement to sanitize the inputs user provided and try to insert into your database. In short, prepared statement and multi-query serve different purposes. If security is concerned, example preventing SQL injection, always use prepared statement. While for executing multi-queries at once, use multi-query but handle input carefully to avoid vulnerability. So simply here, I'm going to give you just short example of multi-query statement. Okay, let's give it a shot. Alright, this is our multi-query example here. What I mean here is simple. This is our user's data. Okay, let's say for instance if I try this, 1 equal to 1. You see, it's working. And how about if I run another query, truncate table users. Let me see. Oh, I'm not passing anything here. Okay, so in that case, I'm going to try this one. I'm going to pass it here and run it. I inserted the data successfully and users table is nowhere to be found. If we take a look here, we'll find our users table doesn't exist anymore. And you see, it is nowhere to be found. Alright, I'm going to import it again and alright. The problem here is we cannot use prepared statement. Here is our multi-query. Insert into users, username, email, password, and followed by the values. And the query to the same thing. And if I said to try the same thing, I can set user 3, sorry about that. Come back here and assign username 3, my name 3, and this one my username 2, for instance. So once I run this code, it's going to execute successfully. And for instance, user, and I submitted it. The data inserted successfully. So how about if we try this and see, it's working. And if I try to retrieve ID4, if I try to run this, it's not going to show because we have no data inside. And if I try to run this, ID equal to 1, you see, it displays successfully. ID result 1. iFarouq at example.com, and this is our password. Let me insert another data and see, it's working. And if I said admin 3 to admin, it's all working. And if I try to run this is what is going to happen, you see. So how about if I try to run this truncate table users? Is it going to really work? Yes, it is. It works. You see, it displays nothing because we have nothing in our database table. See, we have nothing. And if I inserted the data, it's going to work perfectly. See, it's working. So how can we sanitize this? So to sanitize our data, we can simply do this. We have only 2 to 3 arguments. So the method here we are going to use is filter underscore input. Here it is. The first argument here is to assign what kind of input I will receive. So the input we are receiving here is input post. So the second argument is the name of our data we are receiving from this table, from our HTML form. So we are going to pass the name inside here, and the last argument is what kind of sanitization do we want. Filter underscore to sanitize special chars. That's it. So if we pass this, it's going to work just perfectly. And the same thing with the password here. But as for email address, we are going to set sanitize email address instead of special chars. You see, sanitize email. So if you pass anything apart from email, it's not going to work. It's just going to log the input and return the user back to the form to take a look of the email the user provided. If the email is invalid, then the user needs to get it right, while if it is something malicious, then the system is not going to accept it. So let's give it a shot and see if it's going to work. We are going to try this truncate again right here and see if it's going to work. Unexpected value 22 password. Sorry, I forgot to terminate the line. Okay, you see the record is inserted successfully, and let's give it a shot and see. You see the data has passed successfully without executing this query to truncate or to empty our users table. So if we take a look back here again, we are going to find the exact code I passed through this HTML input, this and this and this. So if I say to pass this email address, is it going to really work? No, it's not. So how about if I didn't sanitize it from here? You see, I can simply change the inputs right from inspect here. Okay, let me show you. This is my form, and if I said to change this from email to text, see, then submit the form. I submit it and it works. You see, you are not safe even if you try to make your form validation through HTML form. Users can manipulate the validation you have set in your HTML code, so you are not safe. You see, the query hasn't passed to database because those are not email address. Even though if I try to maybe run something here without key password and this one as a second argument after password, then another value here which is, let's say, email. Okay, and then that's all. Okay, I'm going to apply the same thing here. Sorry. And then change the form attribute here from email to text. Okay, and then submit it. You see, the record has inserted successfully. And let's take a look here. You see, this is our username and this is our email. You see, it's working successfully without any problem. But what you pass is what you are going to receive. The system is not going to allow you to execute any kind of query through your HTML form. So let's try to review the data we have submitted through our HTML. So this is it, and you see my SQLi multi-query statement is similar to single query statement. The only difference is you can pass multiple queries at one go. Unlike single query statement, you cannot do that. But multi-query statement is less slow than single query statement because you cannot use prepared statement. So if you cannot use prepared statement, you can try to use another kind of method to sanitize the input through the filter sanitization method. Don't forget, you can also sanitize the input even if you are using PDO or MySQLi queries. You can also do that. So if you do that, it's a like multiple layer of securities. If you do that, your application is going to be secured, inshallah. I'm sure about that. This is how we come to an end of this episode. I hope you find it useful and you learn something new and useful that will help you in the future in making your applications more secure, flexible, and more efficiently in use. Alright, but before I round off, I would like to maybe recap the entire video. Firstly, I have brought 3 ways or method to make your SQL query. Number 1 is using SQLi single query statement, and 2 PDO, 3 which I regard as bonus multi-query SQLi statement. All using these 3, I have shown you how vulnerable the raw SQL is and how secure the prepared of SQL query statement are, and highly recommend you using prepared statement or any kind of security layer to make your communication between your application and your database more and more secure. I guess that's all. And if you have anything in mind, like I don't know if there is anyone that are interested in knowing how SQL injection is happening in Postgres. I know not everyone is into that, but for those that are really into Python or Django, I am really sure they are using Postgres. And if you are interested to know how vulnerable Postgres raw code is and how to secure your Postgres query using prepared statement or any kind of security layer, please let me know in the comment section down below. And also, if this is your first time here, kindly consider hitting a subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Also, don't forget to like, share this video with your friends, and drop your comments down below to let me know how useful this content is to you. Also, if you have anything in mind to call my attention towards too, kindly do so. Your suggestions matters, and I will be very glad to go through it and see what improvement I can make. As always make up and never give up. Thank you.